Support for Alabama Aloud comes from Ernest and Hadley Booksellers of Tuscaloosa, Alabama, who strive to provide a unique selection of new, used, and rare books from local, regional, and international sources. Information about online orders at ernestandhadleybooks.com.
From Troy Public Radio, this is Alabama Aloud. I'm Don Noble. Alabama Aloud is the only podcast where you can hear Alabama stories read in their entirety. Today, I'll be reading Eventide by Ravi Howard. Ravi Howard, a native of Montgomery, Alabama, is the author of two novels, Like Trees Walking, based on the 1981 lynching of Michael Donald in Mobile, and Driving the King, the hero of which is unjustly imprisoned in Atmore and goes on to be the chauffeur for Nat King Cole. In this story, Eventide, set in New York Harbor in the 1920s, the narrator flashes back to the racial injustice he suffered in Baldwin County, Alabama, and why he fled north. A half-mile ahead of us at the Old Turn Road, a motorcycle kept straight when it should have gone right. The headlights swerved into the darkness, through the salt marsh, and toward the bay. What the bike hit, I couldn't tell, but the headlight went sideways and into a rise of sand. I listened for hollering, hoping for it, because at least then I'd know the driver was alive. I didn't see anybody in the wash of the headlight. All it showed was the trash that collected in the grass. Prohibition had turned bottles into contraband, but Dead Horse Bay was not a drinking beach like Coney Island or Rockaway. This was a place to toss out bottles. So the glass, some broken already, and the rest soon to be, left a thrown rider with no merciful place to fall. I stopped the truck where the road was wide enough. My daughter slept under a blanket next to me. "Somebody's in the water," I told her. "You wait." She stood and got a bit closer to the windshield, but there was still nobody up walking and not a sound. I ran over to the motorcycle and lifted it quickly, hoping to get the weight off the man. But what it rested on was a dune, man-made, a railroad tie with a hill of blown sand. The top edge had been sifted by the spokes of the white-wall tires. There was no one underneath. I saw the rider sitting a few yards away on a stack of railroad ties that kept the sand from the road. "Careful," he said. "The crankcase is still hot. I'd hate for you to get burned after I got myself off in one piece. Praises be. Didn't realize I was off the road. A hard corner if you don't know it. Needs a marker. Used to be an old turn road they used for horses." He looked to where I nodded. Only one of the slaughterhouses still stood, and instead of dead horses, it was filled with broken-down carriages. What remained of the horses was in the sand. The smooth bits of white on the shore looked as much like coral as they did bone. Hermit crabs had made houses of hollowed pieces. "I owe you a thanks and God bless," he said. I saw the collar then, underneath his coat, a circle of white a bit wider than his neck. The preacher spoke to me like we were in a vestibule. "Might have been a little heavy on the gas. On my way to see a sick waterman, father of one of my church members. First Sunday and all. Visiting the shut-in, and liable to be one." "Rev Harris," he said. "Call me Samuel. I'm over at Bridge Street, African Wesleyan Church in Brooklyn. We can get you back on the road. Got a truck across the way. We can load your motorcycle and give you a ride." "No, sir, I'm fine. If it can crank, then—" But his claim of being fine was untested. He put weight on his feet and doubled over, favoring the right leg. He eased back down then, leaning back and stretching his leg out straight. I saw the problem. Whatever made that hole in the bottom of his shoe was still stuck in his foot. He tried to cross his legs to get a look at it, but the movement set off the pain again. No telling what it was. Sometimes the surf had enough mercy to bury the trash, but sometimes a rusted bit of metal took a razor's edge. Sometimes the bones broke to slivers. Since the city started draining the marsh, the splintered pieces sat upright and ready to cut somebody. I called for Clara, but she was already in the back of the truck I drove for Dr. Weston. She had purchased a harvester truck and made it into a four-wheeled clinic, treating Negro fish pickers and farmhands from Brooklyn up through Rockaway. She let Clara help her with bandages and the light cleaning of the wounds. Clara had 2 hand lanterns lit and had spread out a few of the blankets my wife sewed. "Something in his foot," I told her, and after a quick hello, we helped Samuel into the payload. He watched Clara as she cleaned the pliers. There was gratitude in his face, but a little worry, too. A teenager ready to dig into his foot. "She pulled a fishhook out of me when she was 10, I tell him. "I don't doubt it. A calling like any other, I imagine. So you found your blessing sooner than most." "Dr. Weston's let me help for a while now," Clara says. "Please give the doctor my thanks for using his provisions. Let me know what I owe. You and him. Her. 3rd Negro woman to practice medicine in New York State." She held the light closer to his foot. "Not sure what number I'll be." She got Samuel talking about back home, Choptank River and Cambridge, Maryland. A fiancé moving up in the fall. That was a trick she'd learned watching Dr. Weston. Let that talking work like a little ether to take his mind someplace else before she sent the pliers into his foot. A quick wince was all that Samuel seemed to feel as she freed what had cut into him. "Horsebone. Maybe whale," she said, placing the bone beside them and pressing a cloth to his foot. He jumped a bit with the chill of peroxide. "I guess it could be worse. Could have been my bone that needed tending," Samuel said, his voice loosened by relief. "I have a bottle of turpentine at my place. Soak this old foot, and I'll be good as new." "You might need another sort of bottle once the feeling comes back. It'll hurt sure enough," I told him. "The law's not keen on alcohol, but I guess a taste of whiskey is between you and the Lord." Clara gave me the look of teenage children, a bit of judgment they knew better than to speak. She didn't care for me talking common, and neither did her mother. But the man was in the back of the truck with a hole in his foot, so a little loose talk was just fine. Protestants and Catholics drink different whiskey. I know that much. What kind of liquor do Wesleyans drink? The ones back in Maryland make their own, at least the ones I knew and was kin to. While Clara cleaned the wound, I examined Samuel's shoe, bending it back and forth. "Your foot's better off than this sole. Leather's fine, but this sole was in its last days before you crashed. Clara has a young man you should visit, Richard." The look she tried then didn't hold. As much as she hated a bit of teasing, she knew I liked him. Hearing his name brought her smile on a bit. "He works for a cobbler in East New York. We can send you over to him. He's trying to stay in my good graces, so he'll fix you up. Can make a decent pair of shoes if you give him time." The Reverend looked at my boots, the ones I could carry across broken glass or bone without a bit of worry. "He make those for you?" Clara looked at me again. She knew the story of the boots, the man I'd taken them from, and why. She'd never heard me tell a stranger, and probably wondered if I would. "No, these came from a man I used to work for." I phrased it so that it was not a lie. "Only thing I brought with me when I came up here." The Reverend was still looking at them. Good boots, seasoned but not worn down after 20 years. Proper gift. The best I could think of. I had told Clara about the night in Alabama, where I'd come from and why I left. Her mother taught her to swim so she would never be afraid of water. Dr. Weston showed her wounds so she would never fear blood. I told her about folks who aimed to take everything, and that she might have to take something in return. I carried a few of my fishing things in the back of the truck, just because I was liable to stop on any bridge to see what would bite. It was an old habit, pulling my next meal from the creek or bayou. That was what I was doing the night I ran into some trouble, or trouble walked up on me. All I was doing was minding my line, and a man, Beau Charles, Jr., familiar to anyone in that stretch of the Baldwin County, told me I owed him money. "This bridge is incorporated. It's the town of Blakely now. You need a license," Beau Charles said. "The city ends at the road. Bridge is the bridge. No place else." "Incorporated now, you know what that means. Means you want what's in my pocket." Beau Charles had 2 men with him who were something close to deputies. They were in shadows behind him. He was standing in the middle of the bridge with a narrow flask light glowing in his pocket. It was something he'd started to bring in the new year, and they all wore them during Mardi Gras, too. I heard they carried them in their tailcoat pockets, making their masks and bow ties glow while they marched down Canal Street. The light that Beau Charles carried showed his game warden badge, no bigger than the doubloon he might have thrown in the parades. He'd got himself elected, or chosen, in a city his family near about owned. "You got to pay a fine," he told me, "fishing without a license." He pulled a book out of his pocket and wrote down my name. He knew it without asking. His people owned 3 commissaries in Baldwin County, and they shorted us on everything we bought, but went heavy on what we owed. Half the county would die with debt still on their books. So I came to the water for a reason, to eat something I wouldn't spend weeks paying off. All I owed was the patience to wait for a fish. If I had a nickel for fish, I'd go to the pier, buy a snapper. "No money in your pocket is another fine. Vagrancy." He wrote in his book a bit more. Then he stared like I owed him more talk on top of money. I'd said enough to get myself shot or beat, but the words that would bring me harm were nothing but the truth, so there was no running for it. The float bobbed on my line, and what I would eat that evening was hooked, liable to tangle my line on a low branch and break free. "You wrote my name in your book, Beau Charles. I'll settle. Now leave me be." The men behind the game warden didn't look like friends, but they were on his payroll and would be on me if I fought, so I thought better of it. I turned and sat on the top railing, let my feet on the second, listened to the hush of the water broken by that fish, a big one it seemed, down there, testing my line. "If I lose this fish, then I don't have to pay. You can clear my name." I figured Beau Charles had a pistol under his jacket, and if not, his man did, indeed. If they moved, I'd fall back in the water, swim through the dark, and hide. I could check my line when they'd moved on. But Beau Charles wouldn't do a thing but put another mark in his book, like his mama did at the commissary, making folks pay for any cross word, or stare with more interest. A thumb on a scale. "You're still on my bridge." I lifted my feet straight out. "My butt is on the bridge, but not my feet. What's the fine?" I waited for him to reach under his coat, but he didn't. He came on me quick, with 2 hands on my collar. I grabbed him in kind, took the knuckles on one hand, the wrist of the other, and I lifted with everything I had. I got a good look at the brand-new boots on his feet as I kicked his legs out from under him and fell back over the railing, carrying both of us down those 10 feet into the creek water. These 20 years later, I have tried to make sense of the horse slaughter, the last bit of harvest of a dead thing. I was raised in a tabby house, with bricks made of oyster and bone. We took the last of something living, both meat and the bone of it, to do our living in return. It could go too far, well past the gleaning, into something worse. Beau Charles and his people were planters once, but their best harvest was in our pockets, taking every honest dollar, and with a mark in a book, laying claim to the next. Once they knocked me down to the grist, all they had to do was let me be. But he didn't. So I dragged him down, same as he did me. The flask light showed every bit of terror on his face when we fell headfirst into the creek. The seal around the bulb held for a few seconds, then flickered and left us in the dark. If he'd held me, he could have drowned me easy. I could have done the same. Instead, I broke loose and swam into the flooded branches of a cypress tree and hid, while Beau Charles turned around looking for me, the tail end of his air bubbling out of him. He stopped spinning and looked up. As set as he was on finding me, he wanted that next breath even more. He followed his bubble to the surface, and I swam behind. When he was close enough to touch the rippling, I grabbed his boot. His fingers broke the surface, but that seemed to bring the panic, his hands feeling air that he couldn't breathe. Beau Charles was not a curious man. He didn't have to be. As the aunt who raised me said, a man like that didn't know how his drawers made it from the hamper to the wardrobe, never mind the scrubbing to clear out his stains. People did his worrying for him. So I enjoyed that bit of wonder in his face, the man who had always seemed so sure. His face was a question. I answered him with a turn of his boot heel and shook it, enough for that foot to come loose and for him to rise to the surface. While he was gasping, I grabbed the left boot, because half a pair of $10 boots wasn't worth a dime until I had the both of them. While Clara wrapped Samuel's foot, I walked the bike over to the road. I knew more about four-wheels than I did two, but it looked to be in good shape. An Excelsior with a blue shade on the metal. The only sign of damage were the scratches in the chrome. The white walls had nicks in their coating, but no punctures. It rolled just fine, but the riding I couldn't really know. As I pushed the bike onto hard-packed sand, it moved easily. I saw Reverend Samuel and Clara in the light of the hand lanterns. He pointed out toward the water, and maybe they were swapping stories of the Chesapeake water he traded for this, just like I'd left the Mobile Bay. Once I swam from that creek, I left home and left my name back there, too. In case Beau Charles sent people looking, I would be somebody else. Besides, I had the last name as he did, and it had cost me more than it ever got me. A county full of namesakes, and barely any kin. When I married Augusta, I changed my name to hers, and who I was and who I would be started over. My feet found a puddle or two, but my boots kept me dry and sure-footed. Any bit of dust or scrape I'd polish while sitting on our front steps. When Richard came calling, sometimes they'd join me while I used the polish I made, beeswax and olive oil. I added a little color when it was called for, squid ink or oxblood. Richard would bring me a bottle of what he mixed and sold to the dapper Brooklyn men. The colors had names: Autumn Maple, Moonlight Gray, Eventide. Names are funny because of what they tell you to see. Whoever named this place Dead Horse Bay could have done better than calling it exactly what it was. They could have followed Richard's conjuring. I thought about that gumption when I was bringing my boots back, making them look brand new again. Take a little bit of new truth on my fingertips and put a fresh coat of it everywhere. And the light that fell on my boots wouldn't show the scrapes and the wear, only a luster that hid those bits that were better left underneath. Eventide was published in Silent Beach's Untold Stories and is read here by permission of the author. We hope you don't keep Alabama Aloud all to yourself. Subscribe to our podcast and share it with a friend. Better yet, write us a review in the iTunes store. It helps other people find the podcast. Alabama Aloud is a production of Troy Public Radio and produced by Austin Toy and Kyle Gessett. Special thanks to Matt Clower, Buddy Johnson, Michelle Mowry, and Jennifer Horn. Alabama Aloud is made possible in part by a grant from Alabama State Council on the Arts. So, until next time, when you'll hear more of Alabama Read Aloud, I'm Don Noble. Thanks for listening.